Good morning. It's your boy, Braden Moser. Episode 2, Braden Moser in the morning. Starting off with some energy. Okay, I think I mentioned on some comments, or on a few social media posts, that my plan and my goal is to get 1% better every stream. Easy fix right now. If I just fix my hair. My wife tried to help me before, but you know, this is, I don't got a full makeup studio. But 1% better every single stream. And you're going to be there to watch it happen. Thanks for being here. Let's check in with everybody. How is everyone doing this morning? Good morning. Good morning. Anybody have anything big going on today? Anybody in the chat have anything going on? Anything they're looking forward to? In the meantime, I have the Wednesday. What's that? An ultrasound. I have an ultrasound scheduled for tomorrow. Not for a baby. It's a fun one. Leah says, good morning. I had to refresh the page to get it going. Pumped for part 2. Thank you, Leah. Thanks for being here. Love you. And all of you guys for being here. All right. Well, without further ado, we are 5 minutes into the stream. Oh my gosh. Look at all these people. Good morning. Olin, Bailey, Myra, Leah. I'm so tired. About to milk some cows. That sounds like a fantastic way to start your morning, Myra. Colin is on a boat or something. He's far away. He's in a land far, far away. Okay, let's check in. Before we get officially into the story, audio levels. Is the background music still too loud? That was one of the main comments I received from the last episode. So that's one thing I'm trying to make sure is good. I feel like the music helps fill in those silent gaps. But I want you guys to be able to hear the story, the main part, the conversation. I want you to be involved. I'm assuming we're good because I checked it. That's an assumption. Sounding good to me. Volume is good. Perfect. Excellent. Fantastic. Without further ado, let's get into part 2 of my story. So, Monday, Bailey asked me, she said, how did you get into college if you didn't go to school? Which is a great question. My junior year, I think I alluded to this a little bit in part 1. My junior year, I decided that I wanted to go to school and join this information technology services program, this IT program at a tech school. So in high school, it's typically seen as something that people who have a hard time getting good grades in like traditional classes do. It's vocational studies, or like the trades. So that would be like being a car mechanic or learning how to do electrical work or construction or being a CNA or a firefighter, you know, stuff with your hands. That's the trades, right? And I had a friend, a buddy who I went to church with, who went to this program, and he did the IT program. And while he was in that program, there is an extracurricular organization for students who do vocational studies called Skills USA. And They host competitions, they have professional development programs, and the competitions are like related to the whatever trade the person is studying. So if you're studying welding, they might have like a welding fabrication competition. If you're doing IT, they'll like break computers and have you fix them. So I found out that this kid I went to church with went to Louisville, Kentucky for a week, and he raced robots through like this obstacle course, and you were supposed to pick up ordnances and put them into a special container, like a bomb defusal unit. And I was like, what? That sounds so cool. I mean, I'm 16 years old and I'm hearing that he's driving robots around, and then he got free food for a week and took him to an amusement park. And at the time, the farm was not doing super well. I think traditionally, when someone starts a farm, it takes like 8 years for them to make their first dollar, for them to become profitable. Farms are not an easy business to start and to optimize and to get to a point where you're actually making money. Our family, I believe they did it before I moved out. But by the time I was 16, I'm trying to remember if we had hit that point yet. Either way, for the majority of my childhood, we made negative money each year, to the point where we did qualify for food stamps, on and off a little bit. I'm trying to remember. I think we just like forgot to apply for food stamps one of the years. But anyways, food was for me something that I wanted more of. I'll just leave it at that. So I said, I'm going to sign myself up for school and I'm going to go do this competition. And my entire motivation for this was to go and get free food for a week. In order to get to nationals, which is where that competition is, where you get free food for a week, you have to either compete and take first place at state, or I found out that you can become a state officer of Missouri, so you can run for state office. You could even run for national office. And so what I decided to do was everything that I could possibly do to get to nationals. I wasn't going to leave it up to chance. So I did 2 competitions. I ran for state office. I registered to be a delegate. Like, I did all these things because I was just like, I need to be able to go and get the free food. And as part of this program, the IT program, once a week, they had an English class and a math class. And they were meant to sort of like bring you up to speed. They were like, if you haven't paid attention through all of your schooling, we're going to bring you up to speed so that you just know enough to get into like a trade school. So there's some colleges, typically 2-year colleges around the nation, that are labeled trade schools. And that English class and that math class that I did once a week was enough to like get me back up to speed enough that I could take what's called the high school equivalency test. So if you are homeschooled, there are certain tests that you can take that are basically like you can test out of high school. You didn't have to go, you just took this test and they're like, okay, cool, you know enough. So I went and did the high set, the high school equivalency test. And I got almost 100% in every section, I believe. The one thing I will say is one of the powers that I have with ADHD, because ADHD is not strictly a disability. It's more of a different way of thinking. It's a different type of brain. And I think labeling it a disability is doing people with ADHD a little bit of a disservice. But one of my ADHD superpowers is that I can cram super well. And then I also think conceptually. So if you've met me in real life, I'm terrible with names. It takes me so long to remember someone's name, but you can just generally explain the concept of some complicated task and I'll remember it super well. So I pick things up quickly. I learn things quickly. I am pretty smart, but I didn't go to school. So did well enough on the high set, took the ACT. I think I got like a 20. I'm trying to remember if I got a 26 or if that was my dad. I got 2 points less than my dad, which is pretty good considering I didn't go to school for most of my life. Like from 5th grade on to junior year, pretty much no school. Be smart. Sorry, I told Leah one of the pieces of advice I received last time was to not look at chat until I'm finished with a thought. Well, I'll let that stay. You can still engage, but I need to practice not looking. Okay. So that's how I got into school. Bailey. To give a little bit of context, once I got to school, one of the main reasons I chose to go to BYU Idaho, which there's multiple BYU schools. There's BYU Provo, there's BYU Idaho, there's BYU Hawaii, there's like an online version, and it's so that if you are LDS or Mormon, you can go to a school with like-minded individuals, no matter how intelligent you are. So BYU Provo is sort of like the academic school. There's a lot more going on there. BYU Idaho is sort of like you couldn't get into BYU Provo, you can go to BYU Idaho. I applied for both schools. I got in to BYU Provo, which I was surprised about, but I only had like a half tuition scholarship to Provo, and money was tight, as I mentioned, so I was gonna have to pay for my own schooling on my own. And I'd never had a job outside of farm apart from when I did summer sales. So I went to Houston the summer I turned 18. As soon as I was like, I can get off of this farm, I signed up to go door to door in Texas and sell pest control. And that was awful because Texas people, they like their land, they like their personal space, and they say, "Did you see the no soliciting sign?" And then you hear like a behind the door because they keep their shotgun in their umbrella container. Like I actually had multiple gun threats when I was doing that job. Super fun. But it got me enough money that I could leave without having to have a real job, I guess. So that heavily influenced why I decided to go to BYU Idaho, is because I had the full tuition scholarship versus the half tuition. And then I also had a best friend who was going to BYU Idaho at the time, and I was going to go to school with him. And then he joined the Navy the semester that I got there, and so then I was just alone. Really good guy, love him, but he left me in Idaho. It worked out in the end. That's how I met Leah. That's how I met my wife, my beautiful, amazing, supportive wife. But I feel like I'm getting lost in the details. Let's keep this more of a broad overview, because I don't want the entire episode to be the rest of the story. I want to get into some more of the juicy bits. So, in school, did okay. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA. I would wait until 11 p.m. to do any of my homework when it was due at 11:59. It was a mess. I had no idea how to study. I didn't have those skills. Didn't know what a flashcard was. I didn't know how to take notes in class. Like, I didn't have any of the skills that people learn for how to be a student. But luckily, I had enough anxiety and stress to keep that scholarship, that I would just happen to pull out good grades out of my butt. I met Leah the summer of COVID. So it would have been 2020, right, Leah? Yeah. 2020, I met Leah because I was going to go home for the summer like I had every single summer to help on the farm. But COVID happened, so I didn't want to travel. And so then I got a job doing construction in Idaho. I did framing and met Leah on a dating app, the Mormon dating app. I hit her with the best opening line that anybody has ever sent on a dating app. I believe it was hey, period. That's it. And it was because on this particular dating app, it's called Mutual. You have to write the person that you match with. I think it's within 7 days. So I matched with Leah. I remember seeing her profile. I was like swiping right. I was pretty picky on the dating apps. Like I didn't want to match with somebody that I wasn't interested in talking to. So I would, read their description. I'd look through the pictures, and I remember I came across Leah's profile, and it said like basketball player or something, and she was like tall, and one of her pictures she was piggyback. She was giving a piggyback to some dude, and I was like, that guy, just from what I was looking at it, and I have terrible self-perception issues, so I have no idea what people think about me. But I was like looking at this picture, and I was like, that guy is significantly more attractive than I am. I have no chance. But I'll swipe right anyways, because she played basketball and I played basketball when I was in elementary school. It's one of the biggest regrets of my life is that because I was homeschooled, I was not able to play basketball in high school. In Missouri, you have to be enrolled as a full-time student. And so even when I was going to the IT program, that was only a half-day program. So I would go for 4 hours in the morning, and then I'd go back home and I'd work on the farm. So because of that, I wasn't able to play basketball in high school. But I played when I was younger. I really cared about basketball. My family really cares about basketball. I'm 6'4". Could have been really good at basketball. I have a wingspan of Michael Phelps. I'm pretty sure it's like actually the same wingspan as Michael Phelps. I would have been a legendary basketball player. I swiped right on Leah or up or something on Mutual. And it had been 7 days or 5 days or however many days it's supposed to be that I'm supposed to message her, and I could see like the little circle was about to run out, and I was overthinking what I was going to say to her. I was like, I could come up with like a cute basketball pickup line. I should say something about how beautiful and attractive she is. But then I was just like, I'm running out of time. Hey. I just said hey. And I was like, she's probably not even going to respond, because that's such a terrible line. But she did. And she just said like, hey, I'm actually about to delete this app. You should add me on Snapchat. And then she just like gave me her Snapchat. So I added her on Snapchat, and in typical Braden fashion, I did nothing. I didn't message her. I didn't snap her. I didn't say a single word. And like a week later, Sunday morning, I wake up to a video Snapchat from Leah, and I open it up. This beautiful girl, and she says, hey, do you want to come play volleyball with some friends and I? And I was like, yes, I do. And I opened up the camera part of Snapchat, right, to like see if I looked okay. And I was like, damn, I'm kind of looking tan. My hair looks kind of good. I just woke up. I've got that like good morning voice, like the, hey, yeah, I'd love to come play volleyball with you. Let's do it. So I responded with a video. I said, let's go. I got in the car. She came to pick me up, and just stunning. I like that moment is seared into my mind forever, because I get in the car, I look over to my left, and Leah's legs, dude, they just go on and on and on, right? Like I'm scanning from the passenger seat up to the headrest of the driver's seat, and it just is like 8 miles of legs, and then a head, no torso. She was wearing like short basketball shorts, and I was like, holy moly, I'm gonna marry this girl. And then we went to the volleyball, and it was like all of her childhood high school boyfriends who all clearly had crushes on her and were flirting with her, like subtle, like, we've been friends for years kind of flirting. And I didn't know any of these people, and they were all like best buds for their entire lives. So what do? We come up with a team name, and I don't remember what the team name was, but for some reason our chant, what we would do when we would like spike the ball, right, score, was girth. And so I just was like, for this event, for this activity, I'm going to get super into the team spirit and start saying girth over and over again every single time we do anything cool, so that I can fit in. And part of that is because I was a homeschooled Mormon farm boy, so I had no social skills. Everything I knew about social skills was from church in Missouri. And for those who don't know, in the Mormon church, Independence, Missouri was kind of like declared that it was going to be Zion. So like there's some church history components of Mormonism that happened in Missouri. I don't consider myself to be an expert, so I don't want to go into that too much right now, but essentially a lot of people move to Missouri when they get kicked out of Utah because they're a little bit of like a weird Mormon, and they'll have like a dream or something where they're like, oh, I feel like I'm supposed to go to Zion, to Missouri. And so you end up with some interesting people as far as Mormons go out in Missouri, because they couldn't really stay in Utah anymore. They got kicked out. So those are my social skills. I say girth way too many times the first time I met Leah, but I guessed her middle name at our first date, so I think that got me a second date. Anyways, Leah was sort of the first person that eventually, when I convinced her to like me and eventually date me, she was the first person that really made me feel safe enough to open up about anything and talk about anything and like really believe in myself. I want to get into sort of my deconstruction, or like the process of how I left Mormonism. And I'll do an entire episode about that. But what enabled it was feeling like I had somebody in my corner no matter what. And that was Leah. I'm going to take a pause for a second. And if anybody has any questions, I'm going to read the chat. So let's see here. Going back up, Leah said, pretty smart, haha, I think you're a genius. Thank you, that's very kind. Colin said, literally the smartest dude I know. Bailey said, that's wild. Not surprised you picked it up so quick. Myra said, yes, you're crazy smart, really great with sciencey stuff especially. Bailey said, modern day Romeo. Yeah, I know. I have a way with words. Hey. Myra says, TBH. That's one of my biggest regrets too. Wished we could have been ballers. I know. I want to make a quick disclaimer. I called my brother yesterday and I said, hey, what do you think I need to do differently for tomorrow's episode? And he said, be careful about who you talk about and what you say about them. Because if you say anything and a future employer watches the video, you're not going to get a job if you talk bad about people. So, disclaimer. If all the characters in these stories are not real people, they are. They're inspired by real people. But sort of my life philosophy right now is that story is a huge part of human existence, like why we exist. And everybody has their own internal story that they're telling. And the people that we meet in our lives tend to play characters in those stories, right? Like if you're walking down the street and somebody cat calls you, that person plays the character of a cat caller in the story of your life in your brain. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's who they are, right? It doesn't define them. They might have a lot more depth to them than just being a cat caller. So if I talk about anybody or anything in this show, just understand that I'm not, this isn't a full representation of anyone whatsoever. Like, this is my perspective of a character and a role that they played in my life. And I have no ill feelings towards like anybody at all. And even if I say like I regret working with somebody, that's primarily because of the way that the interaction happened between me and the other person. And often it's because of how I showed up and the way I interpret things. So that being said, moving on with the story. I had some notes I'm going to pull up real quick so that I don't get any more distracted than I have been. Okay, so let's touch a little bit back on Skills USA because I feel like I kind of skipped over that a tiny bit. And then maybe I'll give you a little bit of a day in the life on the farm, what it was like. So I was the primary milker at 12 years old. I was the oldest child. And so when there was something that was like hard to do, I was the one that got asked to do it. And because we didn't have really access to an adult farmhand or other strong people, the expectation was just like, Braden will be able to figure it out and participate and help, right? I was sort of like the scapegoat there. So for a period of time, I was the primary milker. My job was to wake up in the morning. Cows needed to be milked. So I would, when we first moved to the farm, before we had the barn, which we built the barn ourselves. Before we did that, we milked in our garage, like in the front of our house. So I'd go downstairs, typically be around like 8 or 9 a.m. From my perspective, like as a 12-year-old boy, I was like, this is way too early. I was just exhausted all the time. My mom would come upstairs and she'd be like, you gotta milk the cows. So then I'd go milk the cows after procrastinating for like an hour or something. And it'd be, if it was winter, it'd be freezing cold. So we'd open the garage door, we'd bring a couple cows in, 2 cows, close the garage door, turn on this big heater. I'd warm up my hands a little bit, and then I'd wipe the cows' udders off with these rags that we had. And then you have to sanitize them with this special dip stuff that goes on the teats. And then you put the milkers on, because we bought bucket milkers, which means that it's like a vacuum system thing, and you put that vacuum onto the cow's teats and it sucks all the milk out of them into a stainless steel bucket. And then I would pick up that bucket of milk after the cow was done, and I would go and I would dump it into what's called a bulk tank, which is like a large tank, obviously, that holds a multitude of milk, and it cools it down really quickly. It stirs it. So I would take that over and I would dump it. And I think a gallon of milk weighs 8 pounds. How much does a gallon of milk weigh? How much does a gallon of milk weigh? Approximately 8.6 pounds. So I'd have to put it on the weigher. We had this scale thing, so that I could know how much milk each cow was making, and they would typically do somewhere between 2 and 4 gallons of milk, which is like what, 16 to 32 pounds, plus this metal bucket that the milk is in, which was pretty big. So that's why I got these big muscles, is because I was always picking up big buckets of milk made of metal. And then after milking, there was usually some project that we were working on. So for the bulk of my time on the farm, we were building the barn ourselves from scratch, which was a fun time. I'll get to that at some point. It's a whole ordeal. Like, people almost died We had things falling apart. Like, children shouldn't really be doing construction. But it was fun and exciting and a great time. But that is sort of the motivation of why I was like, I need to get off the farm. And so Skills USA was the way I did that. I mentioned I did an IT program. So I joined the semester a little bit late. I think I was 2 months late, or about a month late, somewhere in there. So I had to do some catch up. So I did some like quick study. Basically, the program, we learned how to fix computers. About it. We had to memorize all of the ports and plugs on a computer, the different types of components. Had to figure out how to like build a computer, how to diagnose issues, like if it's going slow, if the internet's not working, if it's a hardware problem, software problem, which I think gave me some really good critical thinking skills, ability to troubleshoot things. But the contest that I did that was related to IT was a contest called Information Technology Services. And that was basically, you go into a room, they break a certain number of computers. There's a written portion of the contest, and they're just like, see how long it takes you to fix the problem, or if you can fix it in the time limit, because sometimes like you just can't figure it out. And I got really lucky my first year, and I won state in the Information Technology Services contest. And then I also got elected as a state officer. And eventually I would be chosen to be the state president of Skills USA Missouri, which meant that I got a lot of professional development training, a lot of like public speaking training. In that role, one of the things that I had to do was host or like run the conference, the state level conference, where all the contests happened. It's called the State Leadership and Skills Conference. So there's like a lot of leadership development and skill-based contests. And so I was literally in front of thousands of students my age, giving like speeches, doing opening ceremony, crying in front of thousands of people at closing ceremony when I had to say farewell and go back to my life as a farm boy. I feel a little bit scatterbrained right now. And I apologize. I feel like I really want... I'm gonna take a second to just sort of like actually explain some of what I want the show to be, because I feel like I'm pretty much caught up. I'm caught up to speed on the gist of my life. Like, stage one, Utah Mormon, middle class, like upper middle class, doing all right. Had DirecTV and Dish Network, a movie theater in my basement, speakers in every room in the house, automated dishwasher lighting, washing machine lighting, cool stuff. Sold all of that, moved to Missouri, started the farm, was an unpaid employee / intern for 4 years until I turned 16, went to school, did Skills USA, was feeling myself, had a great time, did summer sales, got gun threats, went to school, did okay, met my wife, left the church after moving back to Missouri. We're caught up. We're up to speed on the general gist of my life, and that was the goal of the first 2 episodes. Because I have some things that I want to do on this show, that I think it's helpful just to kind of know where I'm coming from, who I am. Might give you some insights into the perspective that I bring to the conversation. And basically, with Braden Moser in the morning, this is sort of like step 1. This is phase 1 of the MCU. The next like things that I've got in the pipeline. I just want to talk about that for a second. I am working on a all natural hair product called Maintain. Clever brand name. That is like beeswax, jojoba oil, rosemary oil, saw palmetto, all of the like good, healthy, natural hairstyling ingredients that you can leave in your hair. And for those that don't know, rosemary oil is actually they've done some studies on it, and they've compared it to, what the heck is the thing called? This is why I shouldn't have done this as a morning show, is because my brain can't remember the terms of things. Hair loss treatment, minoxidil is what it's called. I start to remember it as I type it in. Minoxidil. So rosemary oil is has been tested and studied to be almost, I think, just as effective actually as minoxidil. And in fact, it's if you use minoxidil and rosemary oil at the same time, it's more effective. So it enhances the effect. But some people don't really love the side effects, the negative effects of minoxidil. So I want to include all of those things. And the reason why I'm working on a hair loss product is because I'm cooked. It's the hairline. It's going back. So, and the key component of Maintain is actually the business philosophy, business model, which is something that I've thought a lot about in the last couple of years. It's how I want to do business, how I want to create value in the world. And first and foremost, it's through transparency, honesty, connection, trust, authenticity. So that's part of the reason why Braden Moser in the morning is unscripted, unproduced. I've obviously got an outline, some like bullet points of things I want to talk about, and I'll probably get more detailed in those outlines as time goes on and as I improve. But the core of it is being authentic, showing up like and just being honest. Like this is the show. Yeah, I'm scatterbrained right now. I probably could have done more prep, but that's real, you know. If you were starting your own show, day 2, it's probably not going to be perfect. But as we improve together, as I improve, you'll get to see that growth and that journey, which I fully believe, and Leah believes in me, that it'll go somewhere. So Maintain, just the tip. The business philosophy of Maintain is something, and the business model is something that I call just the tip. A little tongue-in-cheek, but it's essentially where any products or services that I provide, I want to sell at cost of goods sold, which is the cost of the ingredients plus the cost of labor equals cost of goods sold. So like, let's say, for example, with Maintain, the rosemary oil costs me, I use 10 cents of rosemary oil in a bottle of Maintain. I use $1 of beeswax and all of the other ingredients, right? And I'll break down the ingredients list. This is exactly the recipe, the source, the cost of every ingredient in this hair product. And it takes me X amount of time to make a batch, and a batch has 10 jars in it. So like, let's say it takes me an hour and I pay myself $40 an hour, then that's, would that be $4 of labor for a batch of 10? So it's all broken down, and then that's the cost that I sell it for. Just if you did addition of the cost of the ingredients and the time. So there's no profit built in to the BM. Sorry, I'm supposed to not look at the chat. I'll get to that in a second, Colin. I like your comment. I want to add like an overlay so that you can see the chat as it pops up like on the stream without having the chat open. Just to provide context for anybody who doesn't have it open or is watching the replay later. So yeah, everything is going to be sold at cost of goods sold. And then the idea is that if the business itself, the brand has provided value to the consumer, then profit is only going to, like, I'll only have profit, which is like the extra money, the money left over, if people want to support the business by leaving a tip. And it's not like traditional tipping culture, which is like you feel this like pressure, right? You've got the lady on the other side of the square flips it over and it's like there's just gonna be a question, and then she's just like, oh, you put 0, I'm gonna spin your food. It's not like that kind of tip. It's like a donation to a church, right? When you make a donation to a nonprofit or an organization that you want to support, you see their vision, and it's not expected. It's not, there's zero pressure to do something like that. And that just the tip model is sort of how I want to approach my entire life, is provide value at cost and then allow the excess value to speak for itself. So eventually I'll have a segment on the show called Just the Tip, where I will offer free consulting. So currently I do freelance consulting. I charge $85 an hour at the moment. And I've had a few clients that pay me well, and I want to offer some free consulting to the good people of the internet. Whether you work in a business or thinking of starting your own business and you want some marketing advice or business advice, just if you're trying to process leaving your religion, or the existential dread of waking up in the morning and having the freedom to just do whatever you want. Isn't that crazy? But then we follow social norms and structures and go to our 9 to 5, which is great. Provides that structure. So just the tip. That's the plan. No profit whatsoever baked into anything, just cost of goods sold. And that's the business model that I want to take into everything. Maintain. I have a whole list of business ideas and product ideas in my phone that I'd love to develop over time as things grow. So as this podcast grows, as I get some support in that sense, I hope to create some businesses, some products, and some services that really enhance people's lives. Let's get to the chat. Colin said, I had to leave for a minute, so I'm about 3 minutes behind, but you could call this the BMCU, Braden Moser Cinematic Universe. That is perfect. Write that down. I need to take the notes on that. I like that, Colin. And first, I just want to make sure that you know I appreciate you being here. Okay, so Friday. We're getting to the end of the video, the end of the episode today. I want to tell you a little bit about what you can expect in the next few episodes. So I am going to get into my story about how I left Mormonism, the types of questions that I asked, like kind of Mormonism is a very it's the one true church. If you're Mormon, that's kind of what you believe, right? And so there's a lot of it's pretty hard to ask questions and confront that religion. So I'm going to talk about the story behind how some questions came into my mind, sort of like the process of allowing myself to ask questions, allowing myself to have doubts. but I want to do it in a way that is respectful. So like if anybody watching is Mormon, is LDS, I don't want you to leave the church. That's not my goal. I don't want to convince anybody to change their beliefs. And so I'm going to try to do this in a way that is respectful of those who still believe. Leaving the church was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's caused a lot of turmoil. I mean, imagine Mormonism sort of provides you the context of life, right? You have this story of what happened before and what's going to happen after this life, and like what you're supposed to do while you're here. And to take all of that away can leave a person feeling very lost, very isolated, confused, scared. It's like you suddenly look into Pandora's box. You're dropped in the middle of the ocean. You have no idea like what to do, where to go, nothing to orient yourself off of. Super dysregulating. And I wouldn't want that for anybody. And I definitely wouldn't want to be the reason somebody has that happen, because that's a lot of responsibility over someone's life. So I'm going to try and talk about the story in a very neutral way, and just more so about my experience with it, less about like what the specific questions were, or the specific things that I felt like I learned that it's hard to word this. Yeah, I'll just keep it that way. I'll keep it that. It's going to be more about how leaving my religion has affected me, less about how I actually left the religion, because I don't want to have an influence on anybody in that way. So feel safe. I obviously am open to questions about that. If you have concerns or questions or comments during that story or any part of the story, this is meant to be a discussion, meant to be a conversation. I want it to be a place where people can think philosophically and come to their own beliefs and their own understandings about whatever they want to do. And again, sort of a disclaimer, I'm not at the end of my journey. Like looking back, I don't have the perspective of being able to say like, this is what I did. I'm still doing it, right? I think I've sort of talked about my depression as if it's something in the past, or the mental health issues or the struggles that I'm having. I've sort of talked about them like it's something that I'm through. I've talked about it in the past tense, but I'm still in it, deep in the shit. Pardon my French. I do also want to keep my language somewhat clean, but just to let people know, I might occasionally swear because sometimes a swear word just fits better than frick. Sometimes frick is good. So yeah, I'm not at the end of the journey. I'm not looking back. I don't have that. This is how I fixed my life and lived happily ever after perspective. This is more of a, I'm in a hole. I'm looking around. I need some place where I can exist and talk and have my voice feel like it matters and that it's heard. So I really want to discuss sort of like what my guiding lighthouses are on this journey, where I'm placing my values, how I'm making the decisions that I'm making, which you may or may not agree with. Like, especially that business philosophy of just the tip, the idea that I am not going to have a profit built into the products or the services that I provide. A lot of people will be like, I don't agree with that. I think businesses should have profit, and that's okay. We'll get into why I believe this way, and why I think it'll actually work better than most businesses would. Right? I have a belief. I think that this business model will actually result in having a loyal customer base of people that believe and trust in a brand. And I think it'll actually work for the better in the long term. At the end of the day, you watching the person that eventually is supporting my businesses and my vision and my goal, your life is just as valuable and just as important as mine. So why should I just have extra money coming out because I'm like, I want to actually make 3 times more than I bought this product for. So it's about respect. It's about like equally valuing your time, my time, the time of my employees that I will eventually have, hopefully. Rather than like a restaurant, they have profit. They have a profit margin built in to the dishes that they sell. And then they expect the customer to support the servers, the waitresses, the waiters, right, with their tips. This model flips that on its head, and I make sure that everybody is paid first. Their value is paid and respected, and the business itself doesn't just get a profit unless the customer believes in the business. Wow. It's kind of crazy to like actually say all that out loud in a public forum. I've had conversations with like some friends and family about my vision, but there's something pretty intense about saying that in a place where now other people can see it. I think that's about it, guys. 7:55. I feel like future episodes will be more structured. Future episodes will have a better flow. These first 2, I really wanted, and maybe Friday as well. We'll see what ends up happening. I've got a lot going on with the work that I'm doing outside of the podcast. So, and then also I'm a full-time husband, trying to cook, trying to clean, trying to resurface a table, garden, yard, living life. But these first couple of episodes, I really wanted them to feel more like a conversation with a friend or a family member, because that's the majority of the people who are watching right now. If you are not a friend or a family member, I love you. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to some random stranger on the internet. But I also know that the majority of my audience right now is my friends and my family. And so I just wanted to have a conversation with them. Some people I have not spoken to since we left Utah, since we moved to Missouri and started the farm. The majority of my family on my dad's side, I haven't seen since I was 12, since we moved. All of my childhood friends, didn't keep in touch with them. So I've had actually some people from every phase of my life, I broke it down: Utah, middle class, farm, poor, Skills USA, married at 21 or 22, married at 22, and then mental breakdown, all that good stuff. So I have these phases of my life, and depending on where and when you met me, you might just not have any idea about some of this other stuff. I've had some people message me that are just like, I had no idea that this is what your life was like, because they knew me as cover of a magazine, Skills USA president, having conversations with thousands of people, appearing to be confident and self-assured. And then they see like this side of me, post-mental breakdown, where a huge part of that was a huge part of like the mental breakdown, I think, was confidence. Something happened inside of me where I just like lost all trust in myself. We've had a couple messages in the chat. Myra and Bailey, thank you for sticking around and asking questions and sharing your comments with me. I'm gonna officially say like that's the end of the episode. Everything from here on out is just like Q&A discussion. I want to chat with you guys for a second. So Myra says, I think as you're figuring stuff out, it's going to be awesome to be able to share what you're learning and growing and have supportive people rooting for you. Exactly. Yeah. Like I think I mentioned in the first episode that the core of this is community. Braden Moser in the morning is I just want to have that. I want to surround myself with people who want to see me succeed. I'm sure I've had that throughout my life in ways that I didn't realize, but I've also had times in my life where I know I didn't have people in my corner because they were literally asked to raise their hand if they were in my corner and they didn't. So like knowing that I have these people, Colin, Leah, Bailey, Myra, everybody who has messaged me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Snapchat, and just let me know that like they're watching, they're listening, and that I'm heard. Honestly, like that makes all the stress, all the anxiety that I've experienced prepping for the show, the insecurity and the fear that I have, it makes it worth it. Like just to know there's these people. Thank you for being here, seriously. And then Bailey says, maybe for next time, but it's super bold to rely on tips for the profit, and I appreciate the thought behind it. I'm one of those people that gets very nervous about how to pay bills. Does that worry you? Yes, it does. It absolutely does. But that's the thing is, like the business itself doesn't need to make profit. So because the business doesn't, like the business will have bills, but that will get wrapped up in cost of goods sold. Those bills being like, I don't know, the cost of hosting a website, any electricity, or if I eventually have a storefront, right? Like you have like fixed costs and variable costs that are attributed to the operations of a business. But for me, I'm just going to treat myself like an employee. So I mentioned I charge $85 an hour for consultations that I do. That is a lot more than I'm going to pay myself if I'm doing work on this business or on any of the Just the Tip businesses. I think that a pretty good place to start, like as value of human time, right? Like, which is by far the most valuable resource on earth, is human time. I'm excited to get into some of my philosophies, some of like the deeper things that I've come to believe through my deconstruction journey, as I've sort of analyzed like how I can get meaning from life outside of the religious storyline. I'm excited to talk about that. But one of the core beliefs that I have is that human time is invaluable, right? It's like the one thing that you don't get back. And if you don't believe that there's something after this, you kind of just have to, you have to live your life, right? You've got, every hour that you spend is an hour that you're never going to get back. So I think that a good wage is around $35 an hour, which if you were on salary doing 40 hours a week is about $70,000 a year. Which is enough to like take care of yourself, take care of your family. I think that's like you can have a life you can live if you are making $70,000 a year, $35 an hour, even if you aren't working 40 hours a week. Juliet says, y'all are an hour ahead. I just woke up. Good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, picking the time for this show was hard because I wanted people to be able to join in the mornings and like just listen while they're getting ready for work and have some stimulating, honest conversation first thing in the morning to get their days going. But going back to what I was talking about, Bailey. So if I'm paying myself $35 an hour to do a batch of maintain, for example, I'm going to continue to use that product idea and that business idea as the example going forward, just because it's easy. It's an easier concept to think about. If it takes me during the week, if I'm working on that, on maintain products, shipping things out, like making it, whatever, I'm just going to log my hours, be like, I spent, I don't know what, like, let's say it takes me 20 hours in 1 week to do all of the batches for 20. I should pull up like an Excel spreadsheet or something and share it. But basically just like $35 an hour times 20 hours equals $700. And then I would just do like however many jars of maintain that I've created, how many individual items I've made. So like, let's say during that week I made 50, then I would do like $700 in labor divided by the 50 jars is $14 of labor went into each jar. So as I scale the amount I'm creating, like if I made 100 jars, then that's only $7 per jar. And then plus like the cost of ingredients. So I'm still able to pay myself essentially a salary, so I can pay my bills. So I'm not really putting any risk on myself if I sell something at cost, because I'm including labor as part of that cost. And I'm definitely coming from a place of privilege, right? I've experienced both poverty as well as like a comfortable middle class lifestyle. And a huge part of like why I'm doing this right now is because honestly, okay, we're gonna get deep for a second. We're gonna get a little bit deeper than I expected to get in this episode, but maybe I should say potential trigger warning if you struggle with depression or suicidal thoughts or anything like that. This might be hard to hear, but essentially, like, I had no desire to exist anymore. Money was not a motivator for me whatsoever. My entire life, I grew up saying like I would do something so that I could get rich, so that I would have the time to do the things I wanted to do. For some reason, I felt like I needed to earn the time first. Like I needed to fill up my bank account with enough money that I could afford to pay for the rest of the time that I wanted to keep. I'm trying to flip that mindset a little bit. Like, again, time is the one thing that we never get back. So we have to spend that wisely. And if none of this works, if none of the business ideas that I have take off, if nobody watches the podcast, if I don't improve and it's always a hot mess like this, and I'm never a success, even if that happens, I'd rather spend my entire life trying to build something I care about than look back at the end of my life and be like, oh, I traded my life to be able to pay my bills. There's this video, it was like a clip from an old movie that just like stuck in my brain. There was this sales guy going around and he was selling, I believe it was a dishwasher, right? And he was like, you can get this dishwasher for only $400 or something like that, right? Like, and it was like in olden times before dishwashers were like super, or laundry machines maybe, were super popular. And he's like, it'll save you so much time. And one of the guys that he was trying to sell it to was just this like Western cowboy looking guy. And he was like, well, what am I going to do with that time that I save? And he's like, well, you'll have more time to go do other things. He's like, well, I'm going to have to go to work to pay for this washing machine. And so now I'm just like trading one job for a different job. You're trading dishwashing or laundry for instead doing an office job, so that you can then afford to pay for the machine that will do that work for you. And so what that, like, I guess like the core concept that I took out of that little clip from that movie or show or whatever the heck it was, maybe I'll try and find it, was that you're gonna have to do something with your time. So you might as well work on something that you enjoy working on and that you actually care about and that you feel like is valuable for more than just money. And again, I know that is coming from a place of privilege, but it's also coming from a place of like, I've got nothing to lose, because mental health wise, like I truly was like, I didn't want to exist. I didn't want to get out of bed. Like I hoped that that I wouldn't have to. And we'll get into some of that in a later episode, because there's so much that goes into that, and it's a really hard topic. I used to think, and I used to say, life sucks, then you die. But I don't think it has to. I think if we choose what we do with our time and we invest in things that we care about, then life doesn't have to suck. And sure, we do die. Consistency is key. I see potential here. Thank you, Juliet. So, I think my message for today is find that thing. Find your passion. Find that thing that you would rather spend your entire life pursuing and fail. And then do it. Keep pursuing it. Keep failing. What happens if it does become a success? And yep, life rocks, and then you die. Alrighty. I think we'll call it there. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope you have a wonderful day. Good morning. And I will hopefully see you on Friday. Bye. I actually need to make a hotkey or something so I can end the broadcast. Because I feel like it's weird for me to be like, bye. And then I'm just sitting here for a minute, like waiting to